Actually, we're pretty excited. We're breaking zero. Things are starting to melt. So we crossed the freezing point. Things are starting to melt and we are just really loving it. All right, so just pop this around for just a second. Hi there. Hello. Oh, and you know what? Oops. Gotta just grab my other camera for the people who are with me on the webinar. Oh, I've got so many cables on my desk today. It's just kind of crazy. Okay, there we go. There we go. All right, and Jessica's from London, Ontario, Canada. Go Canada, Jessica. I'm in Canada too. So good to have you with us. There we go. And here we go there. Now I can say hi to everybody. So good to have you with me today. We are doing an interesting webinar today where we are going to compare and contrast Jensenian iridology and constitutional iridology. And this is a really important thing for us to be doing for all kinds of reasons. It's, oops, I did not mean to do that. There we go. That's what I meant to do. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to flip my camera around so you can see my screen and we're going to get rolling. Fabulous. There we go. All right. So we can talk about this as popular iridology or North American iridology and contrast that to holistic or constitutional. Now it's an interesting juxtaposition of words, isn't it? To think of popular and holistic, North American and constitutional. It's probably safe to say that most people who practice iridology actually consider themselves to be holistic, right? I mean, usually the people who are practicing iridology professionally are herbalists, naturopaths, nutrition coaches, aromatherapists, people who do like to consider themselves as being very holistic. And so as we ask that question, we are going to look at why I've created this juxtaposition of popular versus holistic. All righty, now for those of you who are new to me, just want to take a moment to introduce myself. I am Judith Cobb. I am a master herbalist, a natural nutrition clinical practitioner, and a certified comprehensive iridology instructor. I have been a holistic health coach since 1980. And you can do whatever math you need to do on that one. I did start when I was quite young. And I have also, for many of those years, for about 35 of those years, because where I live, there wasn't a lot of opportunity to learn. Whenever I would learn something, I would teach it. And so I've taught clients, I've taught practitioners over this last 35 years. And now I love having the internet because it means that I can teach way more people and have way more fun. I love teaching. I love what I do. We're going to be looking at a lot of different eye sides today and talking about them. So I hope you are ready to roll. Just as we're getting ready to do that, just wanted to invite you to hop on over to bit.ly/3professionalsecrets. There's dashes and periods in there. This is a way, if you're not already on my email list, for you to get on my email list to see when I'm teaching more about iridology. This little 3 professional secrets document that this email address, this URL is going to give you access to, is especially designed for holistic practitioners who love working one-on-one with their clients, but find that their client appointments often run over time, or that they struggle to get their client protocols designed within their paid client sessions. So this little document is going to give you the first 3 steps of how to get control of your time and your business. So you might want to grab that address and hop on over there and go and get the download. All right, let's do some iridology. Yeah? Sound like fun? All right. Let's start here. If you've been around iridology for a bit, you're going to recognize what these are, right? When I first started out, the only type of iridology that was really available in North America back in 1980 was what we'll call popular iridology. It was really based on the work of Bernard Jensen, and that's all there was. There was no other choice. These other charts are some that are also available in various places online. This is the scan of the very first chart I ever owned, and you can see how yellowed and worn it is. It's pretty grody to look at, but you know what? I keep it because I learned so much back then. Many of these people, these charts have been created by people I actually know. And that's kind of cool to have been in the industry that long that I've been able to meet most of these people. In fact, I think I've met all of them. And as we go through today, I really want you to understand that I am not dissing any of these people. I am not meaning any disrespect. I am not disrespecting them at all. I want to build on the foundation that many of them have laid for us. Because what I see happening when most people, when most iridologists use these charts, I'm going to move my camera way closer to my computer screen so you can see what I'm talking about here. When we use charts like this that have the areas subdivided into teeny tiny things, teeny tiny zones, and we're looking at this eye, an eyeball that is only, the iris is only about 1/2 inch across, maybe 5/8 of an inch. Yeah, maybe. But we're looking at a chart where the eye diagram is 7 or 8 inches across. It makes us think that, yeah, I can find this area really, really well. But when you bring that down from something that is about this big to something that is about this big, it suddenly becomes really difficult to pinpoint absolutely precisely where these tiny little spaces are. Now, this is super important. It's dividing a map down into these teensy-weensy sections and looking at the fibers, which are also known as trabeculae. And we're looking at a zone that might be 2 trabeculae wide, 2 fibers. If you looked up close at eyes, you'll know what I mean when I say fibers, especially if you looked primarily at blue eyes or mixed eyes. And so these areas become so small that it is really, really difficult to pinpoint that exact area in the eye. The other thing is we don't necessarily have areas in the, we don't necessarily have ways of identifying things. So when we look at this chart, it actually has areas for the renal pelvis. Do you know your anatomy and physiology really well? And you know that the renal pelvis is a very small part in the kidney. Well, they've got that on this chart. And I got to tell you, I love Harry Wolf. He's just an amazing man. But I will also tell you that what happens when an iridologist has a chart like this is we are tempted to subdivide the body into minuscule parts, much like a medical doctor, and that we are then tempted to prescribe a treatment for those tiny parts. And that is not holistic. That is what has gotten many iridologists into trouble by saying they could assess and diagnose this little teeny part that was a specific tiny area of the body. We don't have a herb that works on just the renal pelvis. But we do have herbs that work on the kidneys. We don't know of a food that works on just the renal pelvis, but we know of dietary modifications that can support the entire kidney. So you've seen people on Facebook and on different social media platforms who say, post your eye pictures here, I'll do an iris analysis. They've got these really lousy photos that are not high resolution, and they're giving very specific details that you really can't even see if you really know your stuff. And they're pinpointing areas. I mean, how are they going to find that area that's literally 2 fibers wide and get it accurately? I mean, if that eye photo is tilted at all, even a little bit, you're totally messed up, right? And so when we have that happening, the tongue, the nose becomes the tongue, or the eye becomes the upper jaw because the chart is tilted, the map is tilted. And that is not helpful or useful. It's kind of like that problem that we hear about nowadays where, and there's a study done at the Mayo Clinic that shows that when they do autopsies, medical doctors are wrong 20% of the time. What they had diagnosed the patient with on autopsy is proven 20% of the time to be wrong. When we break these eye zones down into those tiny areas, we have a far greater chance than 20% of being wrong. We need to be very careful. I studied Jensenian iridology for the first 10 years of my practice, so from 1980 to 1990, and I was getting really super frustrated with it because I'd been taught some things that we're going to talk about as we go through and look at different eyes today that just weren't bearing out to be true. And it was so frustrating. So I was about ready to leave iridology completely when I learned about constitutional iridology. I've been a constitutional iridologist for 30 years now, and I've developed my own eye map that I use with my students particularly as a way of teaching them. And you will notice with this eye map that there is nothing teensy-weensy subdivided. We are working strictly with organs and organ systems that have a metabolic impact in the body. That would not include your pinky finger. It would not include your arm. It would not include your ankle, right? It includes organs that actually do things metabolically. So this is a holistic iridology map. And again, notice that it only has the functional organs and organ systems on it. We don't work with just structure or anything like that. We broaden, we narrow down to things that have an impact. Because we don't have herbs that work on those little teeny parts. So when we have maps like this one, which are we're more inclined to focus on the interrelationship of organs and organ systems. And that is a much more holistic approach, looking at the body as a whole. How is this affecting this? How can this affect that? As opposed to this point and that point and individual things. So this is one of the reasons why it's really important that as iridologists, we have a really solid foundation in anatomy and physiology. We have to understand how the organs work together and how they affect each other. Does that make sense? Yeah, does it? And so if that makes sense to you, I'd like to see a thumbs up or something. Let me know that we're on the same page. If you would like a copy of this iridology map, if you go to iridology.education, there is as a website, there is a little pop-up box that will come up that will offer you the opportunity to download this iridology map. So you feel free to do that as well. Hey, we got lots of people with us on Instagram. Thanks so much, Heidi. Really appreciate that thumbs up saying that you are on the same wavelength as this. This is great. Hi, Katie. Good to see you on Instagram as well. And those of you who are with us on Facebook, I'd love it if you'd let me know your name and where you're from, because it just helps me to do a better job when I know a little bit about who I'm teaching. In constitutional iridology, are you ready to launch into this? Yeah. In constitutional iridology, we first look at the overall color of the eye. And this teaches us about general overarching inherent tendencies. Constitutional iridology is all about inherent tendencies. So we would say, looking at this beautiful blue eye, that this person has a tendency to be over acid throughout his body. So we're not talking stomach, we're talking body tissue. And that he has a predisposition to the sluggish flow of blood and lymph. Did you notice I said inherent tendencies? That is so important, because we cannot say for sure from the picture if he's actually having problems in those areas. We need to have a conversation with him to see what his symptoms are like and what his diet and his lifestyle are like. That is holistic, right? Conversation with the client. So when we do that, we may learn that while he has these tendencies, he's already figured out that dairy products are not good for him, for instance. And as we work with him and we work with his diet and we work with supplements and we maybe make some lifestyle changes, we're not going to see anything in the iris change at all. Okay. If he had symptoms, things like lymphatic swellings, surface circulatory issues, reduced immune response, we would use diet and lifestyle and supplements to help get his body back on track, and we would see his health improve. And that's the important part, right? Seeing that his symptoms improve, seeing that his body is working better. I don't give a hoot whether I see a change in the iris, because I've been at this long enough to know that I won't. We're going to talk about that in a moment. Every case that I've ever seen online that has reported iris changes has had some critical flaws in the technology. Different cameras were used for the before and after pictures, which means different lighting, which means different exposure levels, can mean things like different f-stops, different shutter speeds. every one of those variables changes what the image looks like. There are several books that have been published where they show before and after pictures, and when you look at them closely, you will ascertain from the skin tones, from the color of the sclera or the white of the eye, that different cameras were used. And sometimes it's not even the same person. The before picture is one person and the after picture is another person. Be critical. Learn to have a very critical eye when you see before and after photos. Every scientist knows that in order to make a valid comparison, all of the parameters of the technology, all of the parameters of the experiment have to be controlled. And if there is any difference in those variables, it's what's called dirty data. It's data that has no value whatsoever and has to be thrown out. There are certainly a lot more indicators in this eye, but we're not going to look at it today. As a Jensenian iridologist, I would have told this person, so we're going back to my first 10 years as an iridologist, I would have told this person that they have congested lymphatics, that they need to do a lymphatic flush, and that the lymphatic markers would all go away. But for all the people I did this with, and that included some pretty intense cleanses that included enemas and fasting and juices and supplements. And for all of the intense protocols we did, we never once saw irides change. It was really, really disappointing because I'd been taught they would change. Each color or base constitution has a different set of inherent health traits and health risks. And that's really important for us to realize. In constitutional iridology, this iris has inherent predispositions towards liver insufficiencies and some high acid predispositions. So with this client, we would ask liver-oriented questions first to ascertain if that kind of supports what's needed. These eyes are not ever going to turn blue, just saying. In Jensenian iridology, we would have said that this person was toxic and needed some deep cleansing and that these eyes would become blue with cleansing. But now we know from research that has built on Jensen's work and has continued over the last 30, 40, 50 years, we now know that pigment is inherent. It does not disperse with cleansing. It's not going to go away. This eye will always be this color, and that's okay, because that serves as a reminder that we always need to support the liver, and we always need to support that acid predisposition. And what we really want to change is this person's health. We really want them to be on board with changing their health. Jessica, thank you for that. And so Jessica's with me on the webinar. Yay! All right, so here we have a dark brown eye. Some people say dark brown eyes are the hardest to read. I think they're the most fascinating to read because you really have to understand your anatomy and your physiology to be able to say, I see this and this and this, and when I combine those, it means I need to ask these questions. I need to look in this direction. So understanding this all helps us to get a much deeper understanding of the inherent predispositions that our client has. So again, this eye suggests a strong liver and blood insufficient predisposition, but we have to ask questions. As it turns out, this woman likely has a liver predisposition that leads to the inability to methylate her B vitamins. Her eyes didn't give me that last detail. Her eyes gave me the detail that liver probably has some insufficiencies in the way it works. Understanding her case, which was that she has polycystic ovarian syndrome, made me wonder if one of those insufficiencies was that she doesn't methylate her Bs. And when we added methylated Bs to her program, she was able to conceive. And that was her whole reason for coming to see me, is that she and her husband wanted to have a baby and they'd been trying for years and had had no success. When we supported the liver and did the methylated Bs with her, she got pregnant and had a beautiful baby boy. Both Jensenian Jensenian would also say that this person is prone to liver insufficiencies just from the image, and there would be no conversation needed. But there are other markings in this eye that really made me think I needed to look at those B vitamins. And unfortunately, we don't have time to look at everything today, right? Then after we've considered the base color, so is it a blue eye? Is it a biliary eye? Is it a hematogenic eye or a brown eye? Then we need to consider color variations within the eye itself. So in this case, we're specifically looking at these flecks. Now, depending on the screen that you're viewing this on, you may see these as orange or rust. In real life, when I took the photos and then I compared it back to her eyes, because photos are never accurate for color, you can never use a photo as a 100% tell for color, ever, 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 ever. And I know because I played with cameras and I played with different settings, and never do we get things to match exactly, just saying. But on her actual eyes, looking with a very white pen light, those flecks are quite orange, rusty orange. So the rusty orange gives us some choice of what direction we want to go. North American Iridology would say these flecks indicate toxins that need to be cleansed out, and that cleansing will dissolve these pigments, right? Constitutional says these pigments are inherent. Even if they appeared in later life, they were not earned, they are inherent. So I want you to think about this for just a moment. When you were little, like let's say 5 years old, did you have crow's feet? I don't know how old any of you are. I'm just asking, do you have crow's feet? Did you have the little laugh lines? The smile lines, did you have those? Probably not. What brought those up? Well, a part of it is certainly if you smile a lot, you get the crow's feet and the laugh lines, right? But some people get them who are grumpy, who never smile. Have you known a few people like that? Yeah, why did they get them? They get them because at a certain point in time, their body is inherently programmed to allow the collagen to break down faster than it repairs. And that allows crow's feet and wrinkles to happen. So with people where pigment surfaces with time, it's an inherent predisposition that that pigment is programmed to surface. And what that pigment then tells us is that that is an inherent predisposition that is likely manifesting now or programmed to become more of a risk now. And so we need to be aware of that to mitigate it. Not to erase the pigment from the eye, but to support the person's health. We need to remember that the pigment color teaches us two very specific things. The color, and there are many colors of pigments, teaches us which organ has a predisposition towards insufficiency. Getting tongue-tied. The placement of the pigment tells us which other organ is going to bear the brunt of that insufficiency, right? Because we know that everything in the body affects something else. Do you agree with that? If your liver's out of balance, something else is going to be affected. If the stomach's not working right, something else is going to be affected. If the brain's not working right, everything goes to heck, right? And so we need to understand that there is an interrelationship between organs. And when we understand the color of the pigment and the placement of the pigment, it teaches us that everything is connected. Jessica, thank you. She's saying on the webinar, 100% everything is connected. Thank you for that. I totally agree. When we look at this kind of an eye, which again is more of that mixed kind of an eye, North American Iridology would suggest that this person has accumulated a lot of toxins and requires a massive amount of cleansing. They would teach us that these rings that are coming around here mean that has been an enormous amount of stress that could lead to a nervous breakdown. I want to contrast that now with constitutional. Constitutional suggests that the inherent, that the colors here suggest an inherent predisposition towards liver insufficiencies that could have an impact on digestion and on the transport of nutrients throughout the body. All right. And so when we know that, we know what kinds of questions to ask. We know what kinds of symptoms to expect. And as the client gives us their symptoms, we can ask even better questions. The contraction furrows, that's what we call these rings, teach us that the person is more likely to have a sympathetic nervous system response if they are not properly supported with nerve nutrients. So this person lives on that edge of waiting for the next crisis. These contraction furrows also suggest this is a go-getter. This is someone who likes to be busy. They like to have their to-do list. They like to accomplish things. But only when we have a conversation with a client can we understand the current symptoms and the past history, and then can we actually fully understand what the marks, what information the marks give us now, and what recommendations to make. We need to understand their history, their current symptoms, what the markings mean, and then we can put together where the imbalances are probably happening, because markings can mean different things depending on what other markings we see and depending on the symptoms we have. North American Iridology would say this person has parasites. If you've been around a while, you'll know these are called parasite lines by most North American iridologists. Parasites don't change our genetic structure. The iris is genetically inherent. Everything that's in the iris itself, has been inherited. And parasites don't change our DNA, and we can't pass parasites on through our DNA. The presence of parasites won't change the iris unless they are eye worms, in which case they're actually underneath the cornea, and they're on top of the iris and under the cornea, and they look gross. I haven't seen them personally, but I've looked them up online. And those eye worms can irritate your eye, and they can travel throughout your body, but they don't change your genetic structure or the fiber layout of the iris. Constitutional iridology, on the other hand, says this person is very prone to having sympathetic nervous system responses. And if they have an intense lifestyle, they will benefit greatly by supporting the adrenal glands and getting adequate rest. The next layer of information that we are considering here, oh, Sharon is with us on Facebook. Hi, Sharon, good to see you. The next layer of information we consider is the way the fiber is sitting in the eye. So we're looking at individual threads and how they're sitting, not so much where they're placed, but how they're sitting. Are they nice and straight? Or are they zigzaggy? Do they look woven? And we're looking for leaf and petal shapes and gaps as well. This layer of information adds to our understanding of organ systems and their inherent predispositions. North American iridology would map each and every one of these markings, which they call lesions, and each lesion means there is a problem happening now. So this person has issues right now, according to North American iridology, with their brain, the pituitary, bronchioles, adrenals, kidneys, perineum, rectum, bronchus, and parathyroid. North American iridology also teaches that working on these organs will make these markings go away. I've never seen one go away. I've never seen a fiber change. Just saying. And I have got before and after pictures with the same cameras on the same settings, never seen it. Constitutional iridology says the lacuna, as we call these things, suggests we need to ask about personal or family history of endocrine systems, especially the adrenals and pituitary. And these markings can be passed down 3 to 4 generations, and they may not mean that there's an issue for this person at all. Add to that, if this person has a healthy diet and a good lifestyle, they may already be doing the necessary support that may prevent issues from developing. So these marks aren't going to change, but the person's health can change. The person's health may have changed if they've already started doing the right kinds of things. In North American iridology, every marker, every fiber that's doing wonky things, and every pigment is a current problem that needs to be addressed. So for those of you on Instagram, I'm going to move my camera really close. So we are talking about things like this fiber that's doing this interesting piece here, and this fiber that's being interesting, and this fiber, and this fiber, and just kind of looking around my camera here, we've got this fiber over here. We've got every one of these that is doing weird things. Hello, Sajed, and hello, Farmhouse. Thanks for joining us on Instagram. Every one of those things, this one as well, they would all be indications of something that needs to be worked out, right? Maybe, maybe not. Hi, Sam the Pixel. Glad to see you there. Holistic iridology says that we need to integrate the markings to understand how the inherent predispositions work together to create symptoms that the client might be experiencing. Markings may have different value and impact depending on which markings are present. More than that, this deeper understanding of how things interrelate, how they play off each other, allows us to easily create programs that address more than just a symptom, more than just one thing, but actually take us to the root of the problem. North American iridologist would say that this person has a weak constitution. Makes it sound like this person is delicate or fragile, doomed to a sickly life. Constitutional iridology calls this kind of an eye that has lots of markings, lots of open spaces, lots of wobbly, zigzaggy fibers, calls them connective tissue. And with that understanding, we know we will likely need to support this person's digestion first and foremost, and recommend a lifestyle and food choices to help this person enjoy excellent health. Each and every marking is not important, but each and every marking would be very overwhelming. And I know, because as a former Jensenian iridologist, I used to vomit all of that information onto my clients in one sitting, and they would leave feeling like they had no hope, right? So when we have a lot of markings, it's not that every marking is important, it's as they integrate together, as we understand how they work together, that's what's important. So with constitutional iridology, we take that step back to look at the big picture, the whole eye, rather than dissecting it down into minute bits. When we see and understand this interrelationship of the various constitutional markers, we can work preventively moving forward, right? If we see that there's an inherent predisposition towards issues with the stomach lining, but the person has no problems there, and we can make dietary recommendations and maybe introduce one supplement to protect the stomach lining ongoing, what has that done for the client? That has presented a whole domino effect of prevented a whole domino effect of other symptoms that could come if the stomach lining were to fail. So this is such a powerful thing. It's really almost like having a Star Trek tricorder, right? And we don't get bogged down in every little detail. I see these analyses, oh my goodness, they break my heart, where these people are doing this analysis on Facebook or on Instagram, where they do this long list of every marking they see. And then they do this long list of all the recommendations that they could possibly do. That is not helpful in any way, shape, or form. There's no client who can actually do all of those recommendations, or who even will. When we do holistic iridology, using the iris map is the very last step of an assessment. And sometimes we don't even use it at all, because the constitution, the colors, and just the general fiber structure have given us plenty of information to work with for the time being. They've given us the questions we need to ask when we find out what the client's symptoms are. We look at the eyes. We then understand what questions we need to ask. We can always go back to the map later on if we need to. Really, when we understand iridology in this way, we can actually do a basic assessment from about 2 feet away without any special equipment at all. So if you work in a health food store and you're standing 2 feet away and you've got basic constitutional iridology under your belt, you can help those clients that come into the health food store more than they will ever know, and they will never know how you're so brilliant. Practicing iridology using these principles helps us to avoid overwhelming our clients with too much information in each appointment. And that's valuable because an overwhelmed client is a client who is not going to move forward. It guides us in the questions we need to ask our clients, and it helps us to be much more holistic in our methods with our clients. Does this all make sense? Is this all fitting for you? With that, I would like to invite you to learn more. The course Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology is starting mid-April. We have 2 groups that we're going to be starting. One, Diana, thanks for that. I'm glad it's making sense for you on Instagram. We've got one group starting on Thursday, April 16th, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. If you don't live in the mountain zone or in North America, you want to go to a time and date checker to see how this would work for you. Or Friday, April 17th from 4 to 6 p.m. And the Friday one is especially, it's for anybody actually who wants to sign up, but it's especially for my followers and my friends in Australia because this puts it to Saturday morning for them. Oh, and Jessica says she's loving all of this. I'm so glad. If you want to know more about this upcoming course, I am going to invite you to learn more with me in a webinar. This is an information webinar about the course. So I'm not going to teach iridology in this little webinar that's coming up on March the 12th at 5 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time, but I'm going to give you all of the details about the course, who it's for, how they'll benefit, how it's going to help them in their business, how it's going to help their clients. I'm going to go over what is the tuition, what do you get in the class, and why are the learning pieces that I provide for you so important in helping you to learn. And we'll talk about how do you register for it as well and what your registration options are. And so I hope you've made a note of that URL. I hope you've got that you'll make it a priority to join me on Thursday. That's this coming Thursday. Yikes, halfway through March almost, at 5 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time to learn more about the course. And with that, my friends, that's all I have for you today. Sharon on Facebook says, info makes so much sense. I'm applying for work in a health food store. Wonder if I can put that on my CV. Sharon, if you can put anything on your CV that is health related or customer service related. Seriously, you can and should. And if you've actually got constitutional iridology under your belt, I would certainly mention that, because that shows a depth of learning that a lot of other employees won't have, right? So that's an interesting one. That's a good question, Sharon. So with that, my friends, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for being with me today. I hope you've learned something. I hope you'll join me on Thursday, and I look forward to seeing you again real soon. Bye for now.